professional. I should bring out like my speaker voice and hands here. I'm Mariya. I'm volunteering for Pete and MoDev to host our every second and fourth Friday meetups here in the Canvas workspace. I'm so happy that Mariya and Magali could come today to talk about branding. Next time will be February 14th. So I thought about having everyone share apps that they love. They can share their own, but if they share their own, they have to give props to somebody else too. So if you're sharing your own, you have to come with two apps, yours and somebody else's, or you can just come and talk about an app that you particularly like or love for Valentine's Day. And if you come early, I'll have some cupcakes or something Valentine's. And then February 28th, Ben in the back of the room is going to be speaking for us. He had a successful exit in California, and I'm going to have him talk about the mechanics of having a successful exit. So I'm going to take it off. Mariya and Magali, thank you so much.
Thank you. So this is Branding for Innovators and Networking Pitch Tips. I'm Mariya, founder of Aveya Creative. This is Magali, our marketing strategist. So today's lineup is the basics, and then we're going to talk about the KISS concept, that's the candies. It stands for Keep It Simple and Sincere, so elaborate. What's in a brand, and then of course the details of a successful pitch. Really quick pitch.
So first thing first, we thought it would be kind of interesting to start with the definition. This one is quite boring, to be quite honest with you, but it's from the American Marketing Association, so it's pretty much the authority. So a brand is a name, term, design, symbol, or any other feature that identifies one seller's good or service as distinct from those of other sellers. So this is kind of, when I think about a brand, this is kind of the basic. But what you should think about is very much like three elements. The first one is kind of the visual identity. So we think about the logo, the color, the font. The second one is more about the message that you're trying to convey to your audience. And the third one is more experiential. So the type of experience that your customer has with your product or with your services. So really, a good branding really needs to happen, and when you get those three components and three characteristics done really well. And so many people sometimes get confused about what is that branding, what should I do about it, and should I pay a lot of money, and I don't quite understand what it means and how it differs from marketing. So we're trying to give you a brief definition of how it differs from marketing. Branding is what really comes first. When you get a new product, you identify the value proposition, you kind of hide this idea of what you're trying to achieve there. And branding is what is going to help you really kind of drive all your marketing strategies. Marketing is what comes when you implement, you're starting to want to sell your product and bring it to market. And so the branding is going to be very, very key, and it's going to really help define how you're going to go about it, basically. So this is to give you a quick idea.
Okay, so first, before you do any branding or design an amazing logo and put all that money into it, make sure that your product or service proposes a solution to a problem. It's incredibly simple, but you don't want to put something out there that doesn't fill a specific gap. There needs to be space on the market for it, otherwise no one's going to pay for it.
One of the aspects that, and I think that makes a brand more successful than others, is the idea of the passion. And it's pretty much beyond just the features and characteristics that your product has that may be wonderful, that may be cheaper, that may be solving a big issue for your customer. And really the idea that you're basically delivering a promise to your customer is very, very important. And I think that's kind of the third element that needs to stand out. How you're standing out is really how you manage to do the extra plus. And when you're able to kind of convey this idea that about your essence and your passion or your vision, basically, for your product or your service or even your company, then that really conveys really well, that really resonates well with your customer. And to that end, you really manage to get more of an authentic relationship with that customers, and it's going to be exponential, have really exponential effect on the fact that the customer is going to be able to relate to you and is going to be willing to buy your product. So we wanted to emphasize that aspect.
And spinning off of that, we all know I love Bill Cosby, so I love that quote. And the whole point here is that you can't please everyone. No matter how broad your eventual market may be, it's important to start with a niche. So pick that one group that is going to benefit the most from your solution and go from there. Because we can't all be Google overnight. And even Google wasn't Google overnight. You know, they took steps. They started with search and they expanded into other things. So for example, our niche is pretty easy to find. So we work only with entrepreneurs. So it's startups and then sometimes a little bit past the startup phase. But we found that a lot of agencies here in DC and also abroad, they kind of focus on everything. They work with government, they work with nonprofits, they work with corporations, they work with mom and pop shops, and it's kind of really hard to tell who they're really dedicated to. But so here at Aveya Creative, we work with the startups, our favorite thing is of course the brand strategy, the logos really from the ground up in that starting phase. And then we do a lot of other things going forward with marketing, social media, ads, press releases to really get each brand in the spotlight where it should be.
Another key characteristic of a brand is kind of be able to focus on some of the key attributes that really defines who you are. It's very easy to get, when you're really excited about your product or your service, I want to describe it with so many different adjectives, and it becomes kind of overwhelming when you're trying to, especially when you're trying to explain that to a potential client or a person you haven't met before, and you're trying to understand exactly what is it that you do. What we found out is that really it's important to kind of streamline everything and just trying to think about the basics, like what is it exactly that I'm trying to do? How do I really stand out from my competitors? And in many ways, focus is key in that regard. And I wanted to bring a quick example actually of a few friends of mine starting on a startup recently. It's a social mobile app. And one thing I thought it was interesting that they did is that, so they had this idea, they were in a brainstorming stage, they had pretty much defined what they wanted to do. So what they did is like, so they invited the 10 of us around the table, pretty much like we're doing right now. They had a little PowerPoint like we do, and they briefly explained in a nutshell what the concept was about, the new idea and things like that. And they ended up with Q&A. Everybody had, could chime in and everything. It was really fun. And a day later, I received an email from my friend and said, okay, now that you learn, about the new idea, new business idea, please try to say it in your own words. Like trying to, based on what you remember from that session, trying to say with your words what it is. And we didn't have anything, we were just trying to remember the key aspect, the key attributes of that idea. And we thought it was pretty interesting because everybody had a different take on it. And so then based on that, they were able to kind of identify, okay, this is what is sticking on. People are really interested in this aspect, and maybe we should use those terms, those adjectives to describe what we are all about. So that's just one quick idea that I thought it was pretty neat the way they did it. So that's one way of helping you focus basically on what your business is all about.
Okay, here we go. So for the main concept we're talking about here today is to keep things simple and sincere. Center here. And feel free to enjoy the challenge of this video. But the main points here, of course, that the product or service, whether it be technology or not, needs to be simple in the sense that it's easy to understand and easy to use. So your consumers, they haven't been developing this for years. It's a brand new thing for them. They need to be able to understand what your brand does within seconds. Otherwise, you're going to lose them, and they're not really going to care how awesome it is and how really well it's going to solve their problem. It needs to be easy to use. The term user-friendly goes way beyond websites, as you all know. Whether it's something tangible, something online, or something where it's a person-to-person interaction. It needs to be user-friendly. Don't make people work or think hard. Make it as easy as it is for them to use. If your thing has 8,000 features, choose 5 or choose 3. Just really make it basic. Don't overwhelm people because you'll lose them that way too. The worst thing you would want to do is to frustrate your consumers because that's going to produce negative feedback and negative word of mouth, which even the most amazing PR is going to be very expensive to fix. And the idea behind the sincerity is clear communication. Say what you do and do what you say. If your app solves problem XYZ, when the person gets to it and uses it, make them realize that it solves problem XYZ. A quick example of an app that didn't do that is, for me personally, is with Expedia. So I was expecting this great thing, expedient app, I'm gonna get in there, I'm gonna book all my trips, I have all these points. You can't really do any of that there. So you can look at hotels, you can look at flights. If you want to book anything with a child, by the way, totally impossible. You can't use your points. You can't use multiple credit cards. You can't put your passport info. You basically can't book international. It's just a huge mess. You can't do packages. So it's just all these things where, you know, it baffles me how a huge, successful company could come up with an app that really doesn't help anyone at all. And it's probably hurting them more than anything because people are just using their mobile site or they're going on a desktop, or even worse, to a competitor. And this, the concept behind dedication and action is that everyone from the CEO with the big vision all the way to the frontline people need to share the same brand personality and really get that identity across. Like Starbucks, for example, you know, if Howard Schultz was envisioning this neighborhood coffee shop where everyone knows your name and you come, they're like, oh yeah, Whit, he loves the double latte with, I don't know, shot of caramel or something, and a kiss on top. That, you know, that's going to happen in his neighborhood. You know, and that's going to happen across the world. Otherwise, you know, the brand's going to get lost, and Starbucks would just be known for coffee. And it's not much more than that. And Magali has an example for us on how to evolve the brand based on this concept. Oh, sorry.
Yes, to continue on what Mariya was saying, the idea also that a brand, successful brand, sometimes need to evolve. I mean, there's something to be said about consistency and about being brief and focused, but I think sometimes and many times, you know, things are changing so fast, and then competition turns out to be more fierce than you expected, and sometimes it's actually it's very smart for you to kind of push a little bit for your brand, and make it evolve with times. And this is a cool example. We have Zappos. Probably everybody here is familiar with Zappos, which is supposed to be this huge online source that's selling shoes, and now they're expanding on a lot of different products. But when it first started in 1999, they were set on being, you know, we wanted just to be a huge, like to have the largest selection of shoes. That's going to be what we're going to get all about. And it's very clear, very to the point. And as they discovered there were new competitors on the market, they decided, oh gosh, we got to still be competitive. So in 2003, they decided to provide the best customer service with free shipping, and people could return all the merchandise and things along those lines. So it made them really more competitive, but it still maintained the brand along those lines. And more recently, they started to include, and they went even a step further, and they include this wow factor, and then sort of decided that they didn't want any of their the salespeople having the script on the phone or people on the line and interacting with the customers to be free to do whatever it took for them to make the customer happy. And that is just a way for them. They're really very consistent about the quality of the service they were offering, but they progressively make it better. So there's something to be said. One of the things I want to highlight is the fact that sometimes your brand has to evolve with times, and you have to be very, as long as you stick with the main idea, main essence of who you are as a brand, I think it makes sense to kind of evolve with times.
Perfect. So now that we've all got this whole problem solution down pat, how do we present a brand? This is what we came here for. Please, you guys can't see me over there. You're standing on one side. So the key elements of a brand, as we know it, is our name, logo, font and color, and slogan. Slogan or tagline. Tagline is really briefly being something that sticks with the brand for a long time. A slogan usually changes with various marketing campaigns. Just a quick example for a name. You know you've made it when your brand name is substituted for a commonly used verb. So we all know Google as search. We don't search something, we Google something. I don't know if Bing is ever going to catch up with that. But another thing we can learn from Google is this idea of having a really easy to pronounce brand name and a made-up word. Made-up words are really great, especially for new innovative brands like you all are working on, because they're easier to trademark or register. They tend to be fun to say and a lot easier to kind of build visuals around because they're more playful when they're made-up words. You just gotta do a little bit of research if you plan to expand internationally to make sure that your brand name isn't an insult or something bad in another language. The logo, I'm sure there's no one in this room who doesn't recognize these. And what I really want to drive home here is they're super simple. Again, going back to the KISS concept, there's one color in each logo. Everyone who sees that little blue bird around the entire world thinks Twitter. If Twitter had chosen an 8 different color logo with lots of different things going on, no one would ever recognize it. It's this idea of simplicity. They stick with that same color. They use the same color code in the name of Twitter as well. You see the same colors incorporated on their website. I mean, Apple is just the best example of branding ever. They're the most amazing marketing company that I ever saw. Let alone the fact that they do innovative products. If anything, they're a marketing company. Another example here with font and color. Again, being easily recognizable. So I really want to emphasize the fact that your brand must be instantly recognizable. If it's not, it's not going to grow easily. It's not going to carry across different audiences because people have to share it naturally. And if you have to explain the concept to a friend in order to share it, they might lose it and not catch on. They might not go check out the website later because they'll forget what it is. So here, here we go from Thailand to Russia to all around the world. We recognize these red cans as Coca-Cola, no matter what it says on the can. And I don't eat Thai, but if I go to Thailand and I see that, I'm going to know that I open it and I'm going to taste Coke. Here, what does this make you think of? Thank you. Yeah, so again, the concept here, this is the exact color code that Facebook uses in the exact font. This is Clavica, medium bold. And I mean, even if we hadn't had the F and the B in there, we would have all probably instantly thought of Facebook. And that is really, really strong branding on their part. Just having the basic elements there without even having the word, and boom, you recognize it. A quick example of slogan here. This was actually an Aveya creative client. They're still on with us. When you see the nameplate date, the logo was done before we came on. We helped streamline the tagline only. So when you see the slogan, the perfect way to savor the day, what does it make you think that they do? What kind of company? I mean, what are they involved in? You thought catering too? Any other?
I was thinking food, date.
Food, yes. Food, definitely, yeah. So that was the main feedback. Everyone we asked had said catering company or some sort of food thing. That's not what they do. Let's show you the next slide, see if it helps understand a bit better. So the new tagline is, or slogan, sorry, it's a bit of a tough language to use because a lot of companies, they use slogans for generations and generations, like Nike would just do it, so it kind of becomes their tagline. It's a fuzzy definition. But anyway, so the new slogan for Plate Date was, your personal chef awaits. Now what do you think they do? Exactly, they're a personal chef company. Yeah, you go online, you book your chef, you choose your menus. So it's a little bit like catering, except that it's very personalized. They don't do big events. And so that's just kind of a quick example of how not only did we shorten it, we keep it to 3 or 4 words, make it easy to digest. And it's the whole idea is being able to understand the brand is by being it. All right,
Now to come to the pitch section a little bit, because we talked a little bit about brand, about the different elements of brand, and we wanted to leave you with some sort of actionable items for you to build your own branding statement. Think about it as like people talk about elevator pitch or networking pitch, things along those lines. But we think it's really helpful when sometimes approach you, and it happens, God knows, it happens every day almost in Washington, D.C., and ask you that question, so what do you do? And I found myself to be always like, oh, what should I say? Should I mention this aspect of my background? Should I mention what I'm looking for? Should I mention? I'm kind of like lost in all the amount of information that really could talk about that person. And depending on the venue, depending on if it's a happy hour, if it's a conference, you have different things you want to say to different people. So we thought about really, since we really enjoy branding, and branding is our passion, we thought, what about helping people building their branding statement? And it's kind of an art, but we thought, and there's a lot of value in having something that you could say to anybody, pretty much everybody, in like less than 30 seconds, instead of like the 3 minutes / 2 minutes sometimes elevator pitch. It can be a little long and hard to remember. So, actually, it's the other one. Sorry. I'm sorry. Actually, before we get to that, I wanted to just give you a couple of tips to think about when you want to start thinking about what is my branding statement. So basically, you want to be able to convey like a little brief overview about yourself, about your company. You kind of put those together. So the person in front of you can clearly understand who you are and what you do. It's ideally you want it to be very punchy, solution-oriented. You want the person to be willing to ask for more questions. So you don't want to say too much, you don't want to say too little. You want it to be very, very clear. A lot of times, I mean, I've been in conferences and I met really people with like technical background. They start to explain to me what they do and I just get completely lost. And they start for 2 minutes talking about the product and things like that, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, I don't even know what to ask because I feel embarrassed because I don't understand exactly what it means. So simplicity is key, pretty much like what we talked about for brands. The other thing is, so it's always better to avoid all the fluffy adjectives and that can make it a little bit complicated to understand. Basically, a 5-year-old should be able to understand your branding statement. It should be that basic. The other thing is that we like to emphasize, and it's something that it's not sometimes apparent when you talk to somebody that feel like they have a passion for what they explain to you. Like the idea that you convey your message with some sort of a passion, and you're going to get the other person very interested and wanting to learn more about yourself. So basically, the three little components we thought would be very helpful for you to think about if you were to design your own branding statement is that first, think about what you do best, what is really unique about yourself and your company. And you can actually put those two together. It's going to show you in a minute, actually, we have a little exercise for you guys on how to kind of help you build your own branding statements. The second part is who do you serve? Who is your target segment? And this has to be very, very clear. This is part of your value proposition. And some of you probably already know that perfectly well, but it's a good way to think about who you're serving, who your customer, because you can't really please everybody. So you have to be very selective and you have to be clear in your message. This is what my product is for, who my product is for. And the third component is what is your unique selling point? So how do you stand out? How do you do it? What makes you who you are? So what is your secret sauce in a sense? So to that extent, we have a little, so Mariya is actually passing along those a little template, but here is a quick example, and you can use that template, fill the blanks, you can make your own, but we thought it would be kind of interesting. This is something you have right in front of you. This is exactly what's on the paper. Basically, start with, hi, my name is blank, as a, whatever you do, at name of the company. We offer certain product for a specific target audience. And then you can add at the end, so we are proud to be the only service and product provider in a realm of this specific type of industry that you are in. Thanks to our, and then you can add whatever you want to the selling product. So this is just like one template. You don't have to follow these strict guidelines. But we thought it would be interesting for the sake of having a workshop and getting you engaged to play this little game. So the next slide is actually an example that Mariya is going to present, which I'm sure a lot of you have already heard because we met at these events before. So it's really quick. It actually takes well under 30 seconds. I think it's about 15. So I go, hi, my name is Mariya. I recently launched a new boutique branding and marketing agency here in DC called Aveya Creative. We focus purely on entrepreneurs. So we work with startups on brand strategy, logo design, social media, ad creative, optimized copywriting, and now press releases in 2014. Sorry. We love transforming new ideas into top-of-mind brands. And our current slogan is actually put your brand in the spotlight, which works really well with the setup. So it's super quick. Hopefully just out of that, you guys understood that I'm Mariya, and I have a branding and marketing agency, and it's super simple, so you come and, oh, thank Mariya, logo design. That's really the whole point of it. And like Magali was saying, you never know which networking situation is going to lead to your next investor, to your next client, to your next employee. You want to be able to hook people in and want them to want to continue that conversation, whether it be in person or LinkedIn, what have you. Yeah.
So is that the same introduction you would give whether you're getting up at a networking event and going around the table, or whether you and I are just meeting a crowd of 100 people or shaking hands and I say, what do you do?
It definitely works with the whole going around the table thing. Magali and I have used pretty much that same script at other remote dev events and things like that. But I find it most useful for like mixers, networking events, things that you're in front of one person or maybe a couple people, and you just have a few seconds to catch their attention, and hopefully they'll want to continue talking with you thanks to that. And thanks to your concept being cool too. You can't word your way out of a bad idea, but it's really just, it's a hook. It's really just to grab people. Kind of think of it as your landing page for yourself. So does anyone want to do one up here for the rest of us to critique, or we'll try it one-on-one later on?
Well, you already have one. That's your
For the rest of us to provide a positive feedback, not critique as a structure. No. You look like you want to come up. You're like, I want to try one.
I feel like struggling with that.
You go? Oh,
You
I
don't
say
have to
something
get up here.
different
You
every
don't have to
time.
say it. That's fine.
You were to meet us for the
That's
first
fine,
time.
yeah.
Oh, okay.
Here, come meet us. Maria, what's up?
Great.
Hi.
Hi, how are you doing?
Hi, Maria.
You're Mariya? I'm Caleb.
Hi.
Nice to meet you. Oh,
What-
sorry. I'm waiting for
Sorry,
what do you do?
what do you do? Are you from Citrus?
Yeah, I'm from
Okay, well, I saw
Citrus.
your cards on Twitter, but go ahead.
So I'm in the business development role, and I find companies, global first companies, that are looking for a partner to help them strategize their mobile apps and develop them to reach their customers in new and exciting ways.
Cool, that was good. Yeah. Did you have more?
Yeah, I did. It's different
No.
every time, though. It's
No, it's good.
Was anyone really confused about, so where does Caleb work? Awesome. What does he do? Yes. And what does the company's focus on?
Mobile app.
There you go. It worked. And it wasn't even 10 seconds.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I get confused because like an elevator, so if we were, elevator pitches are typically like 30 to 60 seconds, so it might expand.
If you're in an elevator outside DC,
Yeah.
here you've got 5 floors.
I guess the difference with the elevator pitch, maybe you would have a call at the end, a request at the end.
There's more of a
It's
call
the
to action.
Call to action.
Or
that would be
call for money.
added. Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is a more casual way of explaining what you do and who you're about and to people that you meet for networking events. I guess it would be more accurate to say that.
One of the reasons we wanted to present the networking pitch tips versus the traditional pitch tips is A, there's a lot of that out there already, and B, chances are if you're out, at Shark Tank presenting to Mark Cuban and company, you've already gone through the networking pitch a million times. So we want you to be able to be confident about that networking pitch, to take those steps and, go to events and meet people. Like make sure that the money and time that you're spending going to the events is leading to leads, or is leading to some sort of relationship developing that's beyond just kind of sitting there and listening to stuff.
Can I ask a quick question? So, Caleb, I'm sorry, I'm going to put you on the spot here. You know I love you. So Whitney here is also in the same space. How do we put a pitch out there that would be different than Whitney's? I don't want to put like a pitch battle up here up in the stage here, but like I'm curious to know what you guys would use for your pitch, because you would have the same memorability points as Caleb would, right? But how do we stand out from each other and differentiate how you do something better, different, whatever, than we do?
Well, it really comes down to the unique selling points. You're both at companies that are surviving on the market and clearly have their own clientele. So I would say, so maybe like if you were at an event where maybe everyone was doing the same thing, that's what you're asking, how would you differentiate? Focus on maybe 2 or 3 really unique points. Like what do you believe makes Citrus stand out that makes people only think of Citrus when they hear those words?
Probably mom says we're best.
Or maybe there are particular client groups that you feel are kind of superstars for you guys versus someone else. Like maybe you focus on mobile apps that are then going to government, or maybe you focus on mobile apps that are used in corporations. So I don't know, actually. I haven't done all the research on both your companies as examples, but like for example, like we work only with entrepreneurs and startups. So if we were going to, there's another great boutique branding agency called Sisterina up in Bethesda, and Melanie is awesome. But they work with kind of everything, mostly corporations and nonprofits. And that would be kind of our differentiating point. And we're not treading on each other's ground at all. If anything, we love learning from each other. So it's kind of picking out what you feel makes you special and why you started the brand in the first place, and then really sticking to your guns. Yeah.
It's hard.
Again, don't try to
It's
do
hard.
everything.
It's hard, right? Yeah.
It's impossible.
I would think
Yeah.
I still don't have anything top of mind when I think of both of your
Well,
programs.
sorry, you don't have product and service.
But you could say, our team, and I think that's kind of correct, you all, our team has created Washington programs, our team has created.
Yeah, there are examples.
Well, I'm not sure, but I think that would bring that top of mind.
Yeah.
Because, like, going back to Google, if I forgot your name, your company name, I probably would remember the product that you worked on.
Provide tangible.
Yeah, so very sticky, very.
Yeah.
Otherwise,
You're welcome to start.
Yeah.
I think there's a question. No, it's more than welcome to if you want to.
Okay, so you introduced what to do, where to do it, maybe differentiate, where's the call to action, or what, I guess what's the next question?
Well, we're not here to demo. This is more of to present some tips and ideas.
She's asking
What do you mean
about
for-
formats. What you were
Oh, I'm
saying
sorry.
earlier.
I'm sorry. Thank you for the presentation.
No, for the pitch, we were saying earlier, like, it's a little bit less like an elevator pitch, where you really have this call to action at the end. This one is just a little bit more informal, for informal settings or networking events, happy hours, things, things along those lines, I guess. So it's not just, you don't necessarily looking for something specific, you just want to be able to introduce yourself in a way that the other person understands clearly and in a very short, brief.
Because the thing is, when you're delivering this really quick networking pitch, you don't know if the person standing in front of you could be an investor, a client, employee, etc. So that's why it's very general,
Exactly.
and the call to action would really differ as to what the person then replies. Like maybe afterwards, like Caleb did his pitch, and maybe afterwards they say, oh, that's awesome, we're working on a new app, maybe you can help us send it in the right direction, and boom, then maybe we become a client. So that's kind of gets the ball rolling.
So you would be expecting whoever you're speaking to offer, open a door to some next step. You wouldn't invite it necessarily.
Well, I mean, honestly, it really depends on what the setting is. Like, for example, here it's a bit casual and we're all similar, meaning that we're more likely here to strike up a conversation about something that we agree on, or maybe something where we're both doing a similar thing and we can innovate together, as opposed to, person XYZ becoming a direct client as a result of a conversation here. Whereas if you go to a trade show, and someone comes up to your booth and they say, so what do you do? And you give, that same kind of talk and maybe add a bit more at the end with, more of these kind of examples of success stories and things like that.
I've got a question about the process. How do you all, as your firm, doing your branding kind of marketing thing, interact with an entrepreneur who has their in-house development, the whole process going on? Do you consult, or how do you blend in with that, since you're a freestanding entity?
It's all, it's a fun question. It's all very, very flexible. That's kind of the one thing we're learning along the way with Aveya Creative, is that entrepreneurs in general sort of say each one has a different way of working, which is why the agencies who have this kind of one-size-fits-all strategy never really work out well. So what we would do in that case, for example, we could either become an extension of the in-house marketing team, work one-on-one with developers as consultants. I mean, there's kind of a whole array. So like someone could come to us and say, listen, I have this really cool idea. I want to make it into a brand. I want to go somewhere with it, but all I really do is code. So I don't know what it would look like. I just want to know what it wanted to do. So we would work with them and give it a name, give it a visual, give it a direction, so to speak, and kind of work off their vision and form it into something tangible. Whereas we sometimes, meet people who are already past that stage, and all they want to do is get the word out. So that's kind of where the marketing comes in. And so we take on, say, the social media hat or the ad creative hat. We come up with all the stuff, and they put out their Google ads, and maybe they just want to send out a press release. So part of the structure behind Aveya Creative is that there's no minimum, there's no retainer. If you just need one little thing from us, that's totally fine. If you want us for 40 hours a week for a year, that's fine too. We contract out some work as well. So it's really very flexible. It depends on every client. There's no one size fits all, which makes it harder for us, but it's more fun. It gives more effective results. Can I call Brittany first really quick?
Yeah.
Because you had a question before.
Okay, so based on the question that was previously asked, what Do you ever have challenges when someone already has something in their house and they already have their structure set up and they're like, we want you to do this, we want you to do that, and then it's like they're not like welcoming you to do it even though they want it done just because their structure hasn't, I know I'm like going in circles.
Meaning you find that their structure isn't working and you want to suggest a different way to do it, or?
You can't find where your services can fit in with their needs, even though they need your needs and they want your needs. I don't know if you've had experience with that.
I'm trying to wrap my head around the question, to be honest.
Sometimes, one idea, maybe, I'm not sure exactly referring to that, but sometimes some clients really want, we want to be on social media.
Yes.
Just help it to them.
Yeah.
We don't care. I mean, and then
Just do it.
they haven't gone through that step of like figuring out, well, do I really need to be on social media? Does it make sense for my company or for my organization to be there? And they have the mindset of everybody's on social media, I need to be there. They just like do it. And they just delegate that to you, but there's no much of a vision and much like
Exactly.
yes. In that sense, I think that happens a lot. And then you need to have that conversation and kind of try to help them suggest, well, maybe we should go through a branding strategy. What is your branding strategy? And then based on that, it's going to drive whatever you're going to be doing for marketing activities. It's going to be completely driven by the branding. And I think one of I think also, I'm trying to remember exactly as an example, a more specific example. Sometimes they have an idea also of like, they're really proud of their product. People can really love their product, but they don't have a clear sense of their target segment also, and that makes it a little tricky. So I know that sometimes we run into little issues of having that discussion with them and trying to figure out, let me just think about this. Are you sure exactly that this is who you really your customer is going to be? So yeah, that's sort of a challenge.
Yeah, I guess that's a great overview. I think one way that might be helpful to you, like let's say you're part of the in-house marketing team that is trying to make these things happen, is look to case studies, look to examples, look to things that you've done in the past that you find work, and that'll help you prove to the management that your strategy has a way to succeed because it's been proven before.
Okay.
Or another way is to maybe point them in a certain direction. Usually numbers talk, money talks.
Yeah.
So like let's say you're working on this whole strategy, you're at a pizza company, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And a law firm, but
Okay. Well, we'll focus on the pizza company. That's like an easier example. So let's say, for example, a pizza company wants to expand into the university student market. We're here in DC. So you would go and you would see, where are the students? Because you want the brand to be where the students are. If the students are on Google+, they're on Facebook, they're on Twitter, that's where the brand should be. You shouldn't be spending your entire time on Instagram and Pinterest if that's not where the audience is. So it's really not that the brand needs to be on all social media networks, which I feel like especially a lot of brands in the beginning stages make a mistake of because they spread themselves too thin and then you just end up having not so great content everywhere. It's better to focus where your audience is. If that's where the people are clicking and becoming your customers, that's where you want your strongest presence to be. Sorry, there you go. Sorry.
That's
okay. That's something that I
Can you tell us your brand story and what it means to you? Like how you guys came up with your name and your font and your color and all that stuff?
Yeah, well, I mean, like I said, Magali came on just a few months ago. Actually, the very last one, yeah.
This is a logo.
Magali came on just a few months ago, so for a while it's been a solo shop. So I've been wanting to launch a branding agency since high school. Since my very first internship experience, it was great. I've always wanted to do it. Haven't been lucky enough to find that niche market until about a year and a half ago, when I realized that there was this great, just all these entrepreneurs and innovators out there, and a lot of them just had no idea how to brand their concept. Like they had these great ideas, and then they were like, what do I call it? How do I get it out there? And then they kind of stop and they don't pursue further. A lot of that was strengthened by, I was doing social media at the State Department, and I was focusing particularly on entrepreneurship and innovation for those pages, and there was just kind of a lot going through, a lot learned, a lot of awesome quotes from Hillary Clinton that really kind of strengthened the fact that there really is a market for that. And in terms of the name, it actually it's a bit of a tribute to my father, whom I lost when I was younger. My maiden name is Aveya. People always mispronounced it by saying Aveya. And my husband, my then boyfriend, and we were discussing just kind of name ideas. And he goes, why don't you do something with your maiden name because you won't have it in a while. And I was like, why are we getting married? And it's kind of a fun conversation. Yeah. So if Aveya would have been too complicated and it just didn't really, what would that mean? I wanted to have an A just because it tends to be top of mind for people. It's a made-up word, so it's easier to protect. And it's easy to say. It doesn't insult anyone in any language as far as I know. And there are only about 2 or 3 other companies out, as far as I've searched, that have that name. They don't do the same thing. So it's been pretty good. The color, personally, I'm obsessed with purple. And again, my husband guided me toward that. I don't want it to be too purple because that's too feminine. So we put a ton more blue in it, so now it's more of an indigo. It just kind of went from there. I mean, it's, again, as you see the white, the circle around, it's this whole idea of putting a brand in the spotlight. And we use that, when you take out the Aveya creative, we put other words in there. So like we have an event coming up called Brand New 14, and that's what we have in that circle. And like our thank you cards say thank you in that circle. So it's kind of a more subtle way to convey the brand. What else about it? Oh, it's square. I'm a huge fan of squares for brands because they're really easy to use on social media, and they're great in press releases. They work on a lot of different platforms in print and online. So if you haven't created your logo yet, try not to have one that's too long or kind of oddly shaped. Don't make it vertical because that's just gonna cause you headaches later on, and you're gonna have to change it and use a different mark and just kind of re-educate people. What else about it? Are there any other aspects of it that, no? Is there anything about this confusing? I mean, it'd be interesting to get some feedback.
No, I was just interested to know the story behind it and maybe some of the attributes and personality traits that kind of you mark as your pillars or your values that you stand behind. I know you're talking a lot about Zappos and how they really value the customer experience and really wanted to unleash that power on all of their employees. Is there certain things that you stand behind?
There's this whole element of flexibility and really kind of being completely dedicated to each client, no matter how small or big the project is, in that there could be some little aspect of something that we're working on that's going to make a huge impact on the brand. It doesn't always have to be a multi-million-dollar contract to make a difference. I still really honestly don't understand why companies like Ford, for example, they spent over $40 million rebranding. I don't even remember their new slogan. I mean, it's like one of those things where it's amazing how much money is spent on this stuff. It doesn't have to be that much money. It's really a matter of using time wisely and working one-on-one with people. It makes it a lot easier for us because we work with entrepreneurs, so we're working directly with decision makers, and so things just happen faster, and the people are really into it. Like when you're working with someone where that's their brand, that's their baby, they're gonna work with you. They're gonna answer your questions. They're gonna respond to your emails. They're gonna do, the midnight calls if we have to, and it's really great because it is a great dynamic that it feels like we're almost part of each brand that we work with. It's really fun. Like they're not just accounts, they're real people. You had another question, right?
I was just going to ask you, so you said exclusively for entrepreneurs, and that's included in your introduction as well, but you'll work with a mid-sized business and they have a budget, you're obviously going to take business from them, right? Or
It depends.
Or will you say no?
But it really depends because, and that's another thing where like once you choose a niche, unless you absolutely can't make any money in that niche and you have to go to another one or you have to expand, I really, really like to push kind of staying within a niche. Who's your main target market?
Ours is broad. I mean,
It's
it's mobile first startups.
Right.
And we also
Ideally,
work
we
with
like
Fortune.
to work with big name brands.
We have
like-
Fortune 500s.
Well, they're going to become
that we
big
work
name
with
brands
that
though,
have-
as startups.
They have mobile first projects. You
Yeah.
know? So I mean, ideally, we want to work with mid-sized and Fortune 500, but there's a lot of mobile first startups that have the funding. We're doing some really exciting projects. So I normally say we work with, mobile first startups to Fortune 500s that are looking to take mobile.
Do you find that you have more competition with the big companies, whereas with the smaller companies, it's more just you leading the pack?
It's the opposite.
That's the opposite?
Yeah, I don't think it's just harder to get into the bigger companies. But that's it. But once you get in, there's not a ton of competition.
I mean, my first intuition, just as the founder, is if we can keep up enough of a positive revenue stream to always work only with startups and entrepreneurs, even entrepreneurs who are way past the startup stage, that would be where it sticks. It would really require some sort of super special project, like maybe if the mid to large size company is branching out into something unique to a different, like let's say some company that we already know for, I'm trying to think of an example. Like let's say when Amazon was branching out to My Habit to kind of compete with like the Guild City and all those kind of things, like that might be something that we could maybe work on because it's kind of a new niche market, it's a new project for them, it's almost like a startup within a corporation, but even then.
Maybe AOL's patch or something.
Wow. That was almost up there as like what not to do. Don't be AOL.
Exactly.
Yeah, we didn't want to use any negative examples, so it's, it was up there.
I have like questions, but I want to hold.
Oh, no, it's all right, that's what, I mean, we can sit down and just kind of all chat. Right? It'd be nice to actually see you guys and not white lights. Oh, now we're small.
Can you tell us about brand voice? I think that's something that we're struggling with a little bit right now in terms of how you communicate your message, what type of language you use, whether it's professional, like we've made a marketing promise to each other not to use buzzwords, not to be terse in a very positive way, so concise with everything, and to be very to the point with everything that we say. Easier said than done, right? But to have a personality to come across through your brand and in your words is a lot harder, I think, than to have your personality come across in your visual design. So what advice do you have?
Just don't use the word unique. That would be the main thing. I think the most overused word in marketing that needs to just go away and be buried.
We made the promise not to use cliches as well.
And for some brands that actually might work. You know, it really, it all goes back to your audience. I mean, you want to connect with the people who are, you know, who are feeding you, who are paying you. So as long as the language works for them, I would be able to better answer the question if I really had a good breakdown of your target audience, your clients, and everything. Because I don't know a ton about it quite yet. So that would be kind of the first thing. It's a more complicated answer. But really just to make sure it rings true with your clients. Like for us, like our agreements are really straightforward. The terms and conditions are one page. Like they're vetted by a lawyer, everything's all good, but there are sentences that we can read and understand, and they make sense for real people. Like we're not out there with an 18-page legal terms and conditions of things where people are like, am I signing my life away to the devil? Like, yes, I have to if I want a logo. Like we like to make it real people to real people. I'm not huge on cliches. Like sometimes we'll use quotes for stuff on marketing. Kind of Einstein quotes, and like little like visual kind of quotes, but there isn't really, apart from the word Aveya being a made-up word, we don't really make up words.
I'd like to chime in. I'm looking at your two cards.
Yeah, go ahead. Bring it up.
And so, I mean, citrus,
Both of them.
old tagline, juicy mobile apps.
Let's go.
So what does that convey? I think you've grown up. Now you have a really eye-catching logo and brand and mobile apps that endure. So it shows the maturity already that you've gone from juicy mobile apps to mobile apps that endure. And I see in citrus, trust. You know?
Oh, good job. That's awesome.
In this logo here that
I
you
trust
might
it.
not have found before. So cool. I think you're on the right track.
Cool. Well, that's good.
Maybe that's your voice.
Yeah.
A voice of trust.
Interesting. Okay.
What do you do?
That's my pitch.
Not to put you on the spot. That's a great insight.
No, I'm an account manager with the creative group, and we specialize in placing marketing, communication, design professionals on a project basis. And we successfully placed a designer with Citrus for full-time placement. But my focus is primarily project-based work that we bring in talent on a project basis with clients. So it can be on-site or off-site. Yes, awesome. So, yes.
One thing, I actually sort of give advice to clients entrepreneur type, small to medium, when they're looking to, like, I've got a killer app, it's like, what do I do? In introducing them to possible app developers, one thing that, just to share my experience is, after we get past the sort of branding, initial introductory branding statement, is something about, okay, what is your process? What, the wireframing, the this, et cetera, just something about that you can get past the, okay, that's fun, that's punchy, now I'm interested, or want to ask questions. Something that's like, well, what is the real deal? And, not all your secret soup process, formulas, et cetera, but just what is it that you do? I think in this world for entrepreneurs, it might be like a deli or a consulting company or something. They really don't know. You'd be surprised how much they don't know, and it's kind of like something tangible, I guess, is what I'm trying to articulate. Here's what we'll bring to you. Aside from, we're going to bring you success and love and all good things. Just something, here's our process. We sit down with you, we do something called wireframing, we try to, whatever it is that you do in the course of development. I know that's hard because it's going to vary with each one. But at some level, just something like, okay, I think I can formulate in my mind what my experience with you would be like. I know what I want. I know my endpoint. I want an app. But again, you'd be surprised how much entrepreneurial clients, with, like I said, mid to small sized businesses, don't know what you're talking about. Now, if you're dealing with a large entity like NPR, the State Department, they have IT people. They know exactly what they're coming. Or they have somebody like you were who can, they know you're a smart shopper, so to speak. You know what you're looking for from whomever you're contacting to give you something. The other thing too is that I have found that a lot of mobility, like say 3 to 5 to 10 man woman shops, they're not up to speed on that face-to-face pitch, as opposed to the large group, 1 minute, 3 minutes, whatever. It's like you almost have to say, here are the agenda points we want to go over. And if you're the one, coming to you, you kind of like, I'm working too hard at getting out of you, what it is that you all do. What's your process? How long have you been established? What's generally your terms and conditions? That kind of thing where we can kind of move along. So I guess developing past the initial pit, the initial sort of hook, coming to the table with a potential client with an agenda of those big introductory things is impressive, at least in my experience.
Well, another thing there that you touched on, which was something we mentioned at the very beginning, is this whole idea of presenting a solution to a specific problem. Like maybe for a way for those developers to get their idea across better is to, someone comes to them and say, I want an app, then they should be asking, well, what is your app going to do? Like what is the solution that it's presenting to the app's users? And then that will help guide the process.
But I'll say, just to step back a little, a lot of times that's a touchy discussion. Because when you're in the intro phase, we've found you, we've set up a meeting, we're sitting down at a table, you're still shopping. And so you're kind of like, I don't really want to go into this killer app idea I have. And it's like, it's kind of like, okay, well, let's do non-disclosure agreements. But even then, it's like, no, first I need to know, who are you? How many people do you have? How long have you been established? What is your plan for, say, the next 3 years? Not in detail, we're not investors, but we may be spending $100,000. So a thing that doesn't even occur to clients that would be, I think, impressive for them to hear when I talk about processes, okay, there's the iPhone market, there's the Android market. You'd be surprised, they don't quite get that to begin with. We go through, we identify which market is good, better for your situation, either or, since it's more expensive if you do both. Also the fact that platforms change. Android platforms get updated. We will be with you in 18 months when there needs to be an update to your app just from a platform perspective. Again, a client starting to tick off, wow, I didn't even think of that. And again, all of that is, and you know, so we're not just like, we're looking to be here 18 months from now. We're looking to provide support, or we're not. You know, like you all said, you all can be flexible. We do the coding. You know, we'll plug in, do the coding for you, you get your own marketer, you have to put a team together, and you have to think about downstream. So I'm just saying a little more, you know, the real deal. I know you all were presenting branding today, so I'm kind of, this is unfair, but just sort of to share experience, because you all are so into this world and so up to date with it, and you know what's going on, but the world is starting to permeate out to medium and small businesses, and they're even, you know, up for a $100,000 investment, but they really don't know what all this is, you know, what the process is, and what they're getting from you for $100,000.
Can you say what you do again?
I advise small to medium-sized enterprises when they'll come to me and say, I really have a killer app, and that's my name. You know, I don't even know, how do you get that done? How do you get that? How do I buy that? What do we do? They have no idea. I mean, you know, they know if they need office products, they go to the Office Depot catalog, or, you know, or you put it out on Craigslist and just say, I need an app developer, or they really have, and, you know, it's hard to find. Like, how would I find, you know, in that scenario, citrus?
So people pay you for the advice to like find other people, or you
Correct. Well, yeah, you know, and so I said, well, I was at this motivated meeting and there were really cool people from this thing called Citrus, and they're out in Vienna, so it's, you know, convenient, and why don't I set up a meeting? You know, and so, you know, we can, and on the other side, I'm sort of preparing the client too, because for a lot of clients, they see that little app on their iPhone, they go, oh, this will be like, I don't know, a couple $100, maybe $1,000, you know, there's a little sticker shock there, so it's no use bringing a client and wasting your time when you say, well, you know, it's $100,000. I mean, I'll say before we ever get to that, I'll say to the client, look, this is not an inexpensive process, even though it seems like a simple little thing. And your 13-year-old is telling you, I can do it. You know, me and my buddies can do an app for you. And that's where getting into discussion the process is helpful, because once they hear about, you know, 18 down, there's 2 blends you can do, there's branding involved, there's, you know, the coding is just a piece of it, and plus there's the ongoing, what would you say, upkeep and maintenance of the app, et cetera, getting it out there, then they begin to understand why we're talking about, you know, 100,000 or more. So.
Do you have a lot of people going to you?
Not a lot, but more before, you know, they now see that, you know, the whole mobile appliances thing is just out there, more so than it was even 24 months ago, 2 years ago, and that this is not like a cool little, they now see that this is the now analog to having a website 5 years ago.
Sure.
You know, and it's not just sort of, you know, a cool little, yeah, it's not just games, you know, or that sort of thing, yeah. Yeah.